after law school, within 6 months, I defaulted on my school loans.
Hi everyone, Elle Ballard is here with you today, and I have my special guest with us today, and I'm excited for this conversation. Hi Kim, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. I think it's going to be a great conversation. But before we jump into it, I want to introduce Kim first. Kim Curtis is committed to creating a new paradigm around money, prosperity, and abundance. Her mission is to reveal life's best kept secrets for the mastery of money. Kim is considered among the world's foremost experts in building wealth consciousness. She has directly worked with thought leaders, celebrities, entrepreneurs, and countless individuals looking to create an impact and a flourishing, prosperous life. It's her experience that helps people change the way they think about money and life. I love that. Welcome again, Kim.
Thank you.
And that brings me to my first question. Right after I usually make these introductions, I always am curious, how did your life path lead you to this work?
Believe it or not, I ended up in Finance L by a quiz.
Oh,
How many listeners or viewers know someone in human resources where you do one of those psychological career type quiz and finance came up as something that I would do well in? However, that was certainly not my original background. My background, I actually moved out from New York to Denver, Colorado, and to go to law school.
mm,
And I became an expert in negotiation, mediation, arbitration, and moved to Salt Lake City to start an office for that organization. So I was kind of entrepreneurial, not entrepreneurial. But what happened is I rose up in the organization and I was no longer doing settlement conferences, and I became more like a spokesperson.
mm.
And so at 30 is when I took that quiz, and it came out that to take those skill sets of negotiation, mediation, and move that into money. Hello. What do most people argue over as couples or even individuals with themselves is money. And so I have been doing what I do today for the last almost 30 years.
Wow, wow, such an interesting way to land, this kind of career through this. It's so interesting, right? That's how that happens in life. Like that path is never clear, and then we take this different turns to get to where we supposed to be. I love that. Beautiful. Thank you for
Completely
sharing.
unrelated. And yet the skill set is transferable because it's so easy for me to hold the space in the room
Mhm.
to allow, say, for a spouse to share where maybe they did not have the opportunity to share
Mm,
earlier. And so
yeah.
that skill set actually transfers extremely well.
Yeah, yeah. I like to ask this question because we are Women of the World Network, so we are multinational community. So no matter where you were born and how you grew up and the city and the cultural differences, I like to ask this question: how has your background limited or favored you?
I grew up in a very small town in upstate New York. And when I was 14, my parents got divorced, and my mom got full custody of three teenage girls. She had no employable skills, and
Wow.
so she applied for and received government assisted lunches. And I would get this red ticket. It was actually like a paper raffle ticket that I would have to hand to the cashier at lunch every day.
Mhm.
And the shame around that, the not enough, that my parents were divorced, that my mom couldn't afford money, that I was poor. I mean, that carried through. However, my
Mhm.
mom had one really, really strong value, and that was to get your education because no one could take it away from you. Because that's what happened to her. She ended up not finishing high school because my dad got drafted in the war. And so they got married 3 months before she graduated from high school. So I did. I went to undergrad and went to law school, as I just described. But what happened is after law school, within 6 months, I defaulted on my school loans. I
Mhm.
had no business understanding money, debt, the impact of that debt on my credit report. and what that meant.
Yeah.
And what happened, Elle, is that I had an anonymous donor pay $1,000 on my school loan debt. And the fact that, I always say how you do money is how you do life. If your
Yeah.
head is in the sand on money, trust me, you have other areas that you're ignoring.
Yeah.
Because money is this invisible thread that connects every aspect of our lives, as much as we don't want to admit it. And so the fact that I opened my bill, the statement, to see that it went down was quite remarkable in itself.
Yeah.
And what happened, it was really incredible. It was almost like a snap
Mm-hmm.
because it was anonymous. I couldn't ask them, why me? Or what do you want from me? I actually had to have that conversation with myself.
Uh-huh.
So if someone believed in me that much, who is it that they believe in? Do I believe in me? And if I do, who is that person going to be?
Yes.
And that was the start of me becoming where I am today, is that I literally at that moment recognized that I was responsible for the outcomes of my life.
Mm.
Sure, things happen all around us. Yes, that we have no control over, but we do have control over our choices or our responses.
Yeah.
And that's when I recognized from this point forward that I do believe in myself. It was almost like love, if I were to really be candid. It was like someone did something so enormously beautiful, and that love translated into, for me, self-compassion and self-respect. And I think it was that awareness, that consciousness that created that. So
Wow.
that's why that's what, and it was a decade later before I ended up in finance, but that was the start of
Yeah.
really recognizing who I wanted to be and taking responsibility for it.
Yeah. And of course, we never learn about money in school.
No,
So we don't
regardless
know.
of where we are from.
Yeah. Yes. Right. And so we don't know where to get that
Mhm.
education from, right? But I love how the dots were connecting, and I love, and thank you for sharing all of that, because that I get such a clear picture why you do your work today, because of your personal experiences,
Mhm.
shaping it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that understanding that it's really up to me. Yeah, it's so beautiful. Having that awareness, it's almost, so good. So from then on, you decided to, so you took the steps, you finished your education, and you entered the world of, the money education
Mhm.
and supporting people with all of the, and I didn't actually name the certifications in the
Good,
bio,
good.
because there are so many great ones, and kudos to you that you have all of those. That's amazing. Not
I
sure what
think
it's.
that was my insecurity early in life, that I had to get all of those designations to
Mhm.
believe in myself. And as women, think of how
Oh,
often we do
yes.
that external self that acceptance of the outside world. And that's, I think, what I did with those designations early on in life.
Yeah, yeah. I can totally relate to that as a woman. Yes, yes, definitely. But I believe it's also important. I guess it's part of our past too. And then somehow it's still knowledge and education for
Mhm.
us.
Yeah.
When you started building this business with working with people, I can imagine there are so many skills, right, that we have
Mhm.
to sharpen, working with people, working with money, working with different kinds of people, personalities, mindsets, beliefs. What is your biggest lesson, or something you had to overcome while
Mhm.
building your business as a woman?
In a field, legal and law are both fields that do
Mhm.
not have necessarily a lot of women, or women that succeed in that space give up potentially a lot to be successful. So I honestly would say that the number one thing to be successful around money, not necessarily, I mean, obviously we know in the nature of our work, whether it's finance or law, what we have to do to show up in terms of talent, knowledge, communication skills, all of that. But I want to talk specifically about money because as women, oftentimes we don't feel like we deserve it, or we don't feel like that's our space, that we sometimes pass that off to our mate.
Mhm.
And I think what's most important, and I already mentioned it, and that really is coming back with consciousness around money and that self-love and self-compassion to be able to say, yes, I deserve it.
Yes.
And I think once you say, yes, I deserve it, and I believe I'm worthy, because self-worth is your net worth. I really believe that self-worth equals net worth. And if you can start just there
Yeah.
as a one little beginning step,
Yes.
things will start to unfold because you'll be more aware and more alert, and you'll start to see different things around you that will allow for opportunities, whether you're an entrepreneur. Because remember, money has no value other than the value we give it. So if you think about money is looking for you, not the opposite. So if you understand if money is looking for you, what ideas do you have for it to become of use to the world? And ideas are abundant.
Yeah.
It's unlimited. So if you recognize that money is tied to ideas and it's unlimited, and we have all kinds of ideas, and if many of the listeners or viewers probably keep journals, take one or two and start working towards that idea. And then course correct, because it's just the start.
That's so amazing. And it's such a needed conversation. And what I've realized in building a business as a woman, as well, and coming from the corporate world, I realize it's so different when, and I've been in direct sales before, and I realize it's so different when I charge somebody else's product, or I sell, or I market, because my background is marketing, or I sell or market somebody else's product versus mine. And that's when I really, I started facing all of that you speaking about. And it's so true. I love how you connecting networks with your self-worth. I love that. In building a business, what I also realized is the more we charge as women, the more we keep, the more we get to share with the world, because that's how we operate.
I love that. That's so true.
Yeah. And that's kind of the realization I came when it comes to money. It's such an interesting journey. So I love the work that you do, because I think it's so needed, and again, we were never taught about, and I grew up in a different country, and I was never, it doesn't matter, like you said, it doesn't matter where you grew up. It's like, it was not given to me. And I grew up in a different environment. The way the money was circulating in that economy was completely different environment. So unlearning that, so interesting. So thank you for sharing that. So good.
You're welcome.
So we are Women of the World Network, and I always love, because everyone, of course, every woman is part of the world, and the woman of the world. But I like to ask this question: when you hear Woman of the World, what does it mean for you to be a woman of the world?
Open-minded, of cultures, experienced, independent.
Love that.
I spent a month in Southeast Asia, and we went to, we'd already been to Thailand, but we went to Vietnam, Myanmar, and Cambodia. And Myanmar is a country that's relatively unbanked. So when you go to a place that's unbanked from a financial background, to see that trust is so important, because if you don't trust, you're not going to use the banking system.
Yeah.
And so that was fascinating to think of capitalism as we know it, and to think that the world needs capitalism is really, like, who are we to say that? You know what I mean? Who are we to say that? It sounds very imperialistic. And yet, on the other hand, to think of abundance and joy and well-being.
Yes.
And to be able to come up with conscious capitalism, then I think as women of the world or people of the world, we become greater at how we can change that. How can we change that story?
Yes, I love that. How this whole conversation today is about abundance and all of this. We are, as women of the world, we are leading, and it's up to us to change that. I cannot, I don't know. I cannot even imagine being in the country, but it's interesting. I bet it's an interesting experience.
Well, and we're half the population.
Yeah.
And so whether it's micro loans in certain parts of the world, that it's usually women that are getting those micro loans, because women build up the people around them.
Yes, exactly.
And all boats rise with the rising tide. And I think that the more aware we can be as women of the world around money and our communities and our families, the more our world will lift up,
Yes.
that more people have a place of, I guess, a state of being
Oh, I so agree.
versus survival.
Yes. Yes. Versus lack and survival. Yes. I love that. And the boats rising is my favorite quote, by the way. You almost quoted, but yeah, I know what you meant because I love that quote. And it's so true
Mhm.
because that's
Yeah.
how we operate.
Mhm.
You know, because we have to do it together and we raise everybody
Mhm.
up. I love that. Now, I love again, I love the work you do. I think it's so important, and there are so many great questions that could be asked, and different we
Mhm.
can take it so many different
Mhm.
directions. But I do want to, and we kind of touched on that a little bit here previously, but I want to go back to how the topic of how our relationship with money starts on the inside.
Mm.
And I kind
Mm.
of want to elaborate more a little bit on that topic, and explain to our listeners, right, what we mean by that and why that is important.
We actually touched on it maybe two or three different times in a different way. So if we could bring those all together, my story initially was an inside story
Mhm.
of self-worth and self-love and self-respect, and that was that snap. And it has to start. That's that inside. It has to be inside versus outside. When
Mhm.
it's external, like I need money, um, then you can't add your values to it, and you're not magnetic enough for it to find you.
Mhm.
So I grew up outside of Buffalo, New York, and Buffalo straddles the Canadian border and the state of New York. And what is there is the vast, beautiful Niagara Falls.
Yes.
And that falls at one time powered the streetcars in
Oh,
Buffalo, New York. And eventually, the energy from those falls powered the lights of New York City. But it
wow.
wasn't the Niagara Falls itself, it was the power plants that lined its banks.
Yes.
Money is the same way. Money needs each of us to become something, to be of value to others. And
Mm.
so when you understand that it's this inside job of who you are and being conscious around who you are and understanding what was the money story when you were younger? Did your parents talk about money? Were you around it? Was it a conversation of joy or was it a conversation of struggle? And
Mhm.
unpack that. Is that your story today? How is it serving you? I have a girlfriend who her father would always say, money doesn't buy happiness.
Yeah.
And so she
Right.
believed that money doesn't buy happiness. So she was preventing herself from happiness.
Mhm.
And once she started to recognize that that was actually a myth,
Mhm.
what is true around that, she was able to unpack her own story and then make it more productive.
Yeah.
So I think it starts with, as you mentioned it, limiting beliefs
Yeah.
and turning them into empowering
Yes.
beliefs around money. Because everything in our life starts with a belief. And if we really believe it, it's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't change it. It's true for you.
Right.
So that's why it's an inside job, not an outside job.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I love that. And the fact that we look at things in life from our own perspective, and that's why going back to that belief, we give it energy, we make it alive. But I also love how you touched on the childhood programming and beliefs that we grew
Mhm.
up with, because, and we briefly touched on it in the background conversation, because it's so big. Sometimes we don't realize we it sits in us, in our subconscious minds, right? And I love that. For me, was that the belief that I have to work hard. And some days I still catch myself and correct, but it's, at first was that awareness, right? To, okay, this is what that connects to. And that's one big step, because I have seen my parents work very hard growing up, for money. And so this connection for me was always something that I didn't know that something else exists outside of that
Well,
package.
and it could be generational, Al. It could be not only your parents, your great, Your
Yes.
grandparents, your great-grandparents all flow through. And if you know the genealogy of your family tree, it
Yeah.
helps give insight as to the behaviors that have come through to you. And
Mhm.
it could be, we're talking familiar, but it could be culturally, it
Yes.
could be gender-based,
Gender-based, right. Right.
social issues. There are so many things that are on top of our money story that
Yes.
we need to unpack. I mean, if you think about the conversation, the words around money and capitalism, they're male based. It's
Mm-hmm.
male words that as women it's not like we lean into gross domestic product or the Federal Reserve or inflation.
Yeah.
Those words mean nothing to us, but our family does, our community does. Taking care of our aging parents, all of those matter, and all of those are tied to the money story.
Love this conversation. So good. Alrighty. So I'm going to move on to the rapid fire questions that will finish our conversation today. And by the way, if you are loving this conversation, we're going to post links how to connect with Kim and to continue this conversation to learn for yourself. So we will post it in the comments if you're listening to it. Check it out. But if you are ready, I have only 5 rapid fire questions. Okay. If you're ready.
I'm ready. Let's go for it.
Awesome. Your favorite book name is?
Being Mortal. Oh, I love that book. Being Mortal by Atul Gawande. And
Okay.
it's about medicine and what matters in the end. So it really kind of, as you get close, like whether you're dealing with an aging parent,
Yeah.
like what are the important things? We tend to say, keep them alive at all costs. No, that may not be what's important to your parent. And particularly in the United States, our healthcare system
Yeah.
is out of whack. So if you understand the answers to those questions, it's really a powerful book to help parents, aging parents, and for you as someone that may have to assist with them, know
Yes.
what is right and what questions to ask them. Being
Thank you. I'll
Mortal.
have to check that out. Haven't read that one. Okay, beach or mountains?
Oh, beach, no doubt. I mean, look behind me.
Right. Favorite international destination to visit?
Paris.
Oh, yes. Me too. It's so funny. A lot of the women ask this question. A lot of women say Paris.
How can we
Some
not?
yes,
The city of love.
yes. Summer or winter?
Summer.
And last one is things that you have discovered about yourself recently.
That I can laugh at a lot of different things. And humor definitely helps get through sometimes parenting difficulties.
Yes, yes. That's something I needed to hear today. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Kim, thank you so much for being here. I really enjoyed this conversation with you. Thank you for taking the time. And again, if you listeners enjoyed this conversation, check out Kim's links and connect with her. And I will see you all and hear you all later.